r/NoSleep. Posted by u/archives-h. I work for a company that recovers strange artifacts. Workers must follow specific rules to survive. Part 2. My name is Kyron Gray. I work at this place called Company 7, or at least I think I do. Ever since I started working here I started noticing an odd similarity running through the cases. Recently, I feel as if I'm being watched, and this only adds to my confusion because my supervisor, a woman named Gail Shard, apparently never existed. The company doctor told me to write down some of my experiences in this logbook, so here we go. Entry 1. Entry 2, Classroom. Hello. Kyron Gray here again. Today was a relatively short day. Didn't do much mission, and it was more questioning the very reality we live in. In my first log, I mentioned my supervisor Gail Shard. This morning, I checked into work and found that she never existed. Instead, I found this strange man called Luke Dannerin as my supervisor. Who's he? I asked Mitchell, my partner. He's our supervisor? He replied, confused. Remember? What happened to Gail Shard? I asked. Who? I left Mitchell at that point and headed towards the archives. Everything, from items to employees, were in the archives. I clicked search employees and types in Gail's name. No results. I typed in my name and clicked on my profile. It told me my age, date of birth, rank, and supervisor. The supervisor was Luke Dannerin. I searched Gail's, now Luke's, old office to prove her existence, but there was nothing. It was completely different from yesterday. I told Dr. Magnus about it and he pretended to believe me, but then he just laughed and told me it was a nice April Fool's joke. So I left, confused. By then I had an hour left until I had to go on a mission with the Archive Hydra team, so I headed to the cafeteria. I took a meal without paying attention and sat down. Then it occurred to me I could ask my fellow employees for evidence. I asked about a dozen people, and only 3 of them had any memory of Gail Shard. Most of them didn't know who Luke Dannerin was, however. They said that they recall a distant memory but can't be fully sure. I returned to archives to research anything that could have caused alterations in the world, but I only found 2 results. The first was an ancient stone jar that, according to the team that recovered it, seemed to cause objects to disappear. Only 1 or 2 people would remember the object's existence. However, it wasn't big enough to store a human, and the research showed that only things half the size of it went missing. The other one was a shipwrecked cruise ship. According to the lore, anyone who went into the room where it was kept disappeared from reality after 2 weeks. How this research was gathered nobody knew, and that was the same for how it was transported into Company 7's warehouse. Our warehouse stretches far underground, making use of an ever-expanding cave system. According to legend, the warehouse was created a few thousand years ago by an unknown salesman that supposedly was missing an eye. I've never been put on storage and archive duty, so I personally don't know how large it is and what goes on there. The only thing I know is that you can't leave the area if you're transferred there unless you resign or get transferred to field duty, research, or Banshee protocol. Anyway, before I could research further it was time for my mission. I wasn't told where I was going this time. I was only told to get in a car with 5 other people and relax. I wasn't told about the mission either. By looking at my colleagues' uniforms I could tell they weren't with Company 7. I, and everyone else in the company, wears jet black uniforms, and we all wear colored pins to see our rank. Well, all except for Mitchell, at least. The other 4 people worked for different people, that was for sure. 2 of them wore long coats embroidered with a deer, and the other 2 seemed to dress plainly, but they had swords with them. Whoever they worked for, I didn't recognize. But before I could ask, my supervisor Luke entered the driver's seat. "No talking," he said. "Take a nap." So we did. About 2 or 3 hours later we arrived in a city. Due to privacy reasons, I will not write down the name of the city. We entered an apartment building and Luke split us up into 3 groups. Each group had the same uniforms on, so I was with Mitchell. From what I remember, one of the 2 groups went to the apartment roof, and the other went inside a building across the street. Me and Mitchell were placed in a private room. Our task was to watch the daycare across the street and to notify everyone by the radio if we spotted anything weird or significant. The daycare was small, and we could only see into what seemed to be a classroom for young children. Books and toys were placed neatly on the floor, and I noticed pens, papers, and a chalkboard. I checked the time 7:am. An hour later, straight at 8, a horde of children rushed into the room, all giddy with joy. Behind the children appeared a young woman who I believe was the teacher. "I see kids and a teacher," I radioed. "Take a photo of them all," Luke replied. "Specifically, the faces." "It will be done." I told Mitchell we had to take photos, and so we swapped our binoculars for cameras. It took us an hour to capture the faces of all 20 children and the teacher. These photos would be run through an algorithm to check for, let's just say, the verification. Later today, I was told that the teacher and 3 of the kids had gone missing 6 months earlier. Anyway, we continued watching, and right when it turned 9:08, the teacher called for the kids to all sit. It was oddly neat. Tallest kids in the back, shortest in the front. I couldn't help but laugh as they began reviewing the alphabet. They did some more learning for an hour. And see, that's when the spooky part begins. It's unnatural. At exactly 10:10 the teacher sent all the students but 2 out. According to the schedule on the wall I had taken pains to photograph, they were being dismissed and they were supposed to wait downstairs for their parents to pick them up. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but it seemed like the teacher was growing, and before I could focus my binoculars on it, a black limb just emerged from the teacher's throat. I could only watch, shocked as something dragged itself out of the insides of that woman. The kid tried to run, but I saw the door slam shut and lock itself. "Hey, I think we should get in there," I called. "What's going on, Agent Gray?" Luke replied. "This the lady, something's coming out of her throat. The door just slammed shut and locked itself. A kid's trapped there." "Noted. I will inform the others." And that was that. According to company rules, after a supervisor has noted your information, you are to go back to observing. I looked back to see the teacher's skin as a puddle on the floor. The kid was in the corner, and to my horror I saw this thing. It looked almost human, but its limbs were just too long and spindly and black, like how it looks after it's been burned. The face was, well, it wasn't a face. It looked like a Venus flytrap, and just as charred black as the body. There were so many rows of teeth and I couldn't count them all. Whenever I tried to zoom in with my binoculars, I'd get dizzy and see it suddenly have more limbs, or smell the distinct smell of corpses. The thing snatched the kid and lifted him into the air, which I thought was impossible given how weak its hooked vulture claws looked. But no, the thing just picked the kid up and brought it towards it. I thought the flytrap thing was gonna eat him, but I was wrong. I don't know how, but I saw it remove one of its teeth and the tooth was wriggling like it was some sort of bug. And then these tentacles sprouted from it and I swear it looked like some kind of squid. With its jaws, the monster forced the living tooth down his throat. I swear, for just a moment I saw the kid's eyes turn a deep red, just before the kid just stood there. After that, I saw the kid leave, and I told Luke what had happened. He told me to return to the car and stay there. I told my partner to leave first because I wanted to get one last photograph of the thing. When I looked through the window again, curtains obscured the class. I took a photo anyway and left. Later, I was reviewing the photo and I saw something that wasn't there before. I thought it was my imagination, but in the photo, the curtains had a small opening, barely noticeable. I brought it to the tech department and had it analyzed. There was a face staring directly into the photo. Whatever the teacher thing was, it had stared directly at my camera, as if to mock me. It would certainly explain why I felt like I was being watched as I left the apartment. Looking back, I realized something didn't feel right about this mission. Never, in the history of Company 7, did we ever work with others. Who were these new groups, and why was I sent on this mission? We were allowed to talk the way back, and we introduced ourselves to each other. The people who wore the trench coats, and more distinctly, had a deer embroidered on their clothes, didn't tell me who, or what they worked for, but they did tell me their job. Later, when most of the children were being dismissed, they pretended to be employees and rounded them up. They were told to check the children's heart and throat. They checked them by resting a finger on them. If their heart had an extra heartbeat, or they felt something move down a kid's throat, the kid was taken away and sent to the other 2 people, the ones dressed in regular attire. 3 children were found with these symptoms. The ones who wore regular clothes refused to tell us what became of the children. However, one of the overly talkative workers in the transportation department later told me that right after I came back to home base, she had heard children begging to be let out. "Did you see a slimy bug squid thing?" I asked, remembering the tooth that the stick-like flytrap monster shoved down a throat. "Yeah, it was in a jar," she replied. "What happened to it?" "I gave it over to Jessica Io at Archives. I only do the transfer, I don't actually know what happened to it." Interesting. I remembered Gail's mysterious disappearance and asked her that as well. "No, I don't remember any Gale Shard? Hasn't Luke always been your supervisor? That's about all that happened today. I couldn't research more on the cruise ship I talked about earlier, the one that made people disappear from reality. Something escaped from storage, and according to the poorly drawn sketch warning, it's some sort of creature with a Venus flytrap head exactly like whatever the teacher was. Until next time. Kyron Gray.